Stardew Valley is my favorite dating sim, and being the degenerate miscreant I am, I'll spend the next 100 days trying to date everyone in Stardew Valley simultaneously to unlock a secret cutscene. Subscribe for more suspicious deeds and enjoy the video. Getting up on day 1, I planted my gift from Lewis and got to work gathering forageables as they'd make great gifts in the early game. After purchasing and planting some beans, I got to work meeting all of the hot singles in the area, giving them gifts and making sure to avoid anyone with a husband, wife, or alcohol problem. I finished the day only missing Leah and Sebastian as he makes 100-day videos and never leaves his room. Checking my mail and watering my plants on day 2, I talked to a bunch of people, narrowly avoided a child, gave some gifts and headed back up to see if I could meet Sebastian. I'm convinced he is a Redditor. Walking south, I had a look for forageables and met Leah before remembering about Willy and grabbing my fishing rod. I was fishing with Elliot before deciding to give Sebastian another chance, and amazingly, he was smoking outside, so I said hi. I had now met all of the romanceable NPCs. The reason I was trying to avoid meeting other people was the quest board, since people I hadn't met wouldn't put up quests. That was perfect, as today Leah was asking for a green algae. I'm sure she won't mind. I fished for most of day 3, and by the end, I got 1,000 gold off selling it, sadly meeting Willy in the process. Heading up and giving Leah the algae and a leek, I got my first heart of the challenge. Today was a good day. Heading to the beach, I eagerly got fishing as I wanted a coop. This was because Shane, Alex, and Sam all like eggs, and eventually it would allow me to access the desert where I could get coconuts and cactus fruit. Adopting my new cat, Nob, I harvested my parsnips the next morning, then sold them to Pierre. Using my heap of cash, I bought and planted 60 potatoes, opening the community center along the way. Seeing as the mines were now open, I headed over looking for quartz as they were a great early gift. I ended up finding an emerald and an amethyst, 2 loved gifts, so I was very happy. Clint was outside my door on day 6, which unfortunately forced me to meet him. Along with Marnie from yesterday, I quickly watered my potatoes and had some breakfast before heading back to the mines, carefully avoiding the homeless man. After grabbing a bunch of copper and gems, I made it to level 10, claiming my dripped out boots. Seeing Abigail, I headed down and tried to gift her, but she was playing the flute, so I waited. And no, I am not desperate. It was raining again on day 7, so I headed down in search of forageables, and checking the traveling cart, there was a coconut on sale. And knowing Haley's birthday was rapidly incoming, I grabbed and sold some spring onions and bought it. Putting it away, I went back to the mines, grabbed a whole lot of gems, and made it to level 20, claiming my new sword. The gift limit reset yesterday, so after watering my plants, I spent all of day 8 giving gifts and talking, as to prevent any friendship decay. I tried to give loved gifts where possible, and even checked out the community center, realized not everyone likes daffodils, and headed home. I scared away a crow the next morning, so after reading the wizard's letter, I picked up my scarecrow, forgot why I had, and replaced it in the exact spot it just was. I then wooded my crops, crafted up some bug steak, and headed back to the mines. I was surprised about the amount of grubs just everywhere today. Just every level, grubby grubs everywhere, grubs. Anyways, I found an ancient seed and made it to level 30 safely. Watering my crops and grabbing my gifts, I gave some away, then headed to the wizards to discuss the I'm getting a restraining order. I donated some forageables and gave away some gifts before once again descending into the mines as I needed frozen tears for Sebastian and gold bars for Maru. I made it to level 35. My potatoes were ready on day 11, so I harvested them all, shipped them, and crafted a new chest, organizing my items. I then decided to head to the mines to try for level 40, and with 5 energy left on level 39, I managed to make it, claiming the slingshot, a high DPS ranged weapon known for its immense. Leaving, I checked the quest board, gave a couple more gifts, then headed home where I crafted some furnaces and got smelting. I saw my money pour in the next morning, and I knew I was spending it all on strawberries. I dug out an area for the strawberries, then donated a leek, completing the bundle. I then bought some seeds for the spring crops bundle before planting them and spending the rest of the day smelting and clearing my farm. It was the egg festival on day 13, so I watered and fertilized an area for my strawberries and headed in. I bought 62 seeds, then proceeded to utterly vanquish all of the children in the egg hunt. I planted my seeds after the festival, put on my hat, and headed to bed. After watering all my strawberries the next day, I was forced to meet Jazz in a cutscene, gathered some forageables, and gave Haley a birthday present, giving me 3 hearts. Wanting to get a pickaxe upgrade before my strawberries harvested, I spent the rest of the day fishing in the ocean to try and get the required funds. And of course, still wanting this upgrade, I spent all of the next day fishing as well, coming out with almost 2,000 gold the following morning. So I grabbed some things and headed into town, first accepting a quest from Haley, selling some potatoes to get the last bit of money, and upgrading my pickaxe. I then gave some more gifts, and seeing as there was nothing else to do, I fished for the rest of the day. And finally, after watching a whole lot of cutscenes, I got the new friend achievement, a great milestone in this journey. I then noticed there was salmonberry season, so I got to work gathering food for me to consume. I ended out with a solid 50, which would hopefully last a while. Grabbing my sword I had gotten from a fishing chest, I headed to town, accepted another quest from Haley, and picked up my new copper pickaxe. Very excited to use it, I headed to the mines, where my 2 new tools were incredible, making it to level 50 without a problem. Exiting the mine, I wandered down to the saloon, spoke to everyone, and gave Sebastian a frozen tear. After watering my strawberries, I grabbed my things, completed a quest for Haley, and wandered back to the mine. Since I needed level 80 for gold, Maru's easiest gift, and I couldn't do anything else with my strawberries still growing, I safely made it to level 60 by nightfall. I headed back to the mines on day 20, but mid-afternoon, I left, deposited all of my things, and headed into town. I accepted a quest from Leah, went into the saloon, carefully bought a beer without meeting Gus, and gave it to Shane as a birthday present. I also bought a Joja Cola from the vending machine, which I gave to Leah completing her quest. My strawberries were fully done on day 21, so I picked them all, headed into town, was asked to play a game, which I obviously won, and eventually sold them for a solid 10 grand. Excitedly wandering up, then realizing I needed 300 wood for a coop, I spent all of my energy and multiple field snacks on chopping a bunch of trees, and finally triumphantly placing my coop. Then, seeing as it was a brand new week, I spent the night giving out gifts. I still had some gifts left over, so I headed into town and accepted a quest from Sebastian. Grabbing the quartz he had asked for, I wandered up to the carpenter's, where he wouldn't let me into his room. A bit frustrated, I gave it to Maru instead. After gifting a bunch of villagers, I headed to the beach, found Haley's bracelets, and bought an upgraded fishing rod. And after giving Sebastian his things, I used it for the rest of the night. Seeing the money I made from fishing and wanting more, I grabbed some steak and headed up the mountain. I fished until I was exhausted, wandering down to the beach and sold it all to Willy before fishing again for a while. I then bought a salad for Leah, hoping for 4 hearts, but to no avail. Exiting my home the next day, Demetrius was standing outside my door. I told him to install bats because fruit are a good gift. I then watered my plants, then realized it was the flower dance, so I headed down. I was confident because at that point I naively thought that it was 3 hearts to dance, not 4. The only person who said yes was Haley. This is fine. My strawberries were ready again the next morning, so I shipped them and noticed my coop was done, so I decided I needed a silo. But I didn't have any clay, so I went to the beach and did some suspicious behaviors. Headed up to Robbins and bought a silo. I then wandered down to Marnie's, where I bought 4 chickens and spent the rest of the day in the mines, eventually making it to level 75. I grabbed some produce the next day, ignored Clint's request, and finished a bundle in the community center. I then gave away a gift, cleared my cave, and grinded in the mines until I reached level 80. But my inventory was filled, so I bought an upgrade from Pierre and a sandfish from the traveling cart for some reason. Noticing that my silo was complete and my chickens were crabby, I decided to grab a whole bunch of hay, then dedicate the entire day to getting the resources I needed to buy a barn. I decimated my farm's entire ecosystem, then headed to the mines, chopped a bunch of rock, and finally returned with all of the needed resources. I woke up the next morning realizing I had forgotten Emily's birthday. Disappointed in myself, I fed my chickens, then headed to Robbins, where I ordered a barn. I needed this in order to get the vault room complete, to get sandfish and cactus fruit. Then, since the week had reset, I spent the day giving gifts, then finally got Haley to 8 hearts. It was the first day of summer on day 29, so I cleared my crops and collected my very first eggs, which I could sell or give to Shane, Alex, or Sam. I then bought 65 blueberry seeds, which I planted and fertilized before chopping down some trees and rocks down in the mines to finally craft some mayonnaise machines by nightfall. I decided to give out some eggs the next day, and after finding a diamond in a bin, come out, Sam. I have an egg, Sam. Checking the calendar, I realized it was Maru's birthday next, and knowing she loves gold bars, I headed down to level 80 and chopped a bunch, safely making it to level 85 with a solid 23 ore. My barn was complete, and I wanted some cows on day 31, so I headed down and then went to the restroom. And then I took some photos with Haley and some cows. That's mud on her face. She unfortunately fell on the floor. But I was too poor to buy any cows as I had spent all my money on blueberries, so I fished for the rest of the day. So with my fishing money in hand, I headed down and bought and I then grabbed some things to donate, finally unlocking the vault room. Still needing 3,000 more gold for cows, I wandered down to fish. Getting a bunch of money the next morning, I grabbed some gifts and handed them out. Bought 2 more cows from Marnie and visited Leah. Then deciding to get a big barn, I went down to continue fishing. I did nothing but fish for the next 2 2 entire days. And finally, on day 36, I awoke with 10,000 gold in my pocket. So I tended to my animals and purchased my big barn. I then gave away some gifts and fished once again for the day as I needed money for ducks. With easily enough funds to fill an upgraded coop, I decided not to go fishing and instead head to Marnie's to pick up a milk bucket. Hello? With nothing else on the agenda, I handed out gifts for the rest of the day, noting Maru's birthday was tomorrow. I can't forget that. Waking up the next morning and noticing my big coop was complete, I wandered down to get some ducks. I also bought a milk bucket, then headed up to do some milking. Deciding that I needed earth crystals for mayo machines and copper for a new axe for hardwood for cheese presses, I spent the entire day down in the mines, grinding for these resources. I realized on day 39, I had forgotten Maru's birthday. Nevertheless, today was the luau, so I grabbed the strawberry and ran over. Entering the festival, I'm sorry, please pick it. I dropped in my strawberry, which I was happy to see the governor liked, giving me 60 friendship points with everyone in the festival. The next day, I grabbed some copper and headed into town, noting that Alex's birthday was tomorrow. Can't forget that. I then went to Clint's to upgrade my axe before buying a coffee from Gus and handing it to Harvey. Since I just needed to wait for my axe to finish, I wanted to get the other materials for a cheese press, notably stone, as I didn't have an axe. So I grinded for it until nightfall. I surprised myself the next morning when I actually remembered about Alex's birthday. I could not believe it. Still happy with my success, I headed to the mines to grind for both stone and gold. I got to level 85 and claimed my obsidian edge, then left, got asked to sit under a tree that I had chopped down, played a song, and returned home. My blueberries were done on day 42, so I harvested them before getting some mail from... Who is this? Selling my crops, I headed into town where I collected my newly upgraded axe, which I used to gather hardwood. I got a bunch, then decided to sneakily, suspiciously enter the secret woods to get some more. After chopping some trees the following morning, I finally had the resources to craft a bunch of cheese presses and mayonnaise machines. Then, seeing as I hadn't given gifts yet that week, I grabbed one for basically everyone and headed out. By nightfall, I got the achievement clicks, which I was very happy about. The next morning, I was given a statue by Leah and after watering my crops and tending to my animals, I attended an epic band meet, then decimated an entire ecosystem again on my farm as I needed a big barn. I ended the day gathering stone in the mines. After tending to my things back on the farm, I headed back to the mines where I gathered the last of the stone I needed. Heading back into town, I remembered about Sam's birthday on my own accord without any outside influence at all, so I bought a pizza which I gave to him. And after more mayonnaise and cheese making, I headed to bed. I harvested some more blueberries the next morning, then with resources in hand, I wanted to Robbins to buy my big barn. Checking the calendar for birthdays, then heading down to the beach, I made the investment of an iridium fishing rod and got to work. It's like an NFT. And by nightfall, I was confident I had made back my losses. Unlike the investors of Luna. And I easily had enough the next morning, so resources in hand, I headed to Robbins and ordered my barn upgrade. After chopping some trees, I decided to head down the mines and made some progress in getting to the bottom. Day 48 was another gift day, motivated by the fact I could finally give Elliot a gift that he would actually like. I completed my farm chores, then headed out, was forced to meet Jody in a cutscene, remembered that the bathhouse was unlocked, gave Sebastian a tear, and headed home. Watering my crops again the next morning, I noticed my big barn was complete, so I headed down to Marnie's and bought 4 goats. I was then wandering down to my fruit bat cave when I got the first real fruit it had produced, which was very exciting. I then decided, since my ducks weren't producing feathers, to instead hunt lobster, since it was the other loved gift of Elliot's. I grinded for wood and placed 5 of them by nightfall. Harvesting my blueberries, I noticed that I hadn't got any lobster, and instead I had gotten crayfish. Thinking maybe I needed them in salt water instead, I headed to the beach, showed my bowl skills to Alex, and purchased a bunch of crab pots. It hurt my soul. Placing them down, I spent the day giving everyone gifts, making good progress, and ending the day by creating a large tree farm. I collected the morning newspaper from my crab pots, then built a bunch of wood floor around my tree farm to stop debris and seed spreading. To be fair, it didn't look great. Heading down to the beach, I was happy to see a lobster had been caught, so I gave Elliot a duck feather and cleared out some weeds around the park. I was watching a Blade video when he mentioned meeting everyone, gaining friendship for everyone, so I checked my social page and got to work. Meeting Evelyn, a train, Caroline, Gus, Gus, and Pam. Now I was completely finished other than this man, who literally doesn't leave his home and it's Wednesday. I was so furious. Oh, a lobster. Here you go, Elliot. I decided to chop trees on day 53, so I did. I needed 400 for the coop upgrade I was aiming for, but I didn't get close. I also gave Alex an egg, so that's something that happened. It was raining on day 54, so after finally meeting Pierre and handing out some gifts, I watched a plethora of cutscenes. Nice muscles, Alex. Very cool. Hello, Penny. What? Cool dance, Emily. The horrible thoughts of Shane's alcohol problems still haunted me the next morning, so I gave him a beer and smelted up some quartz, as I needed quartz, gold, and iron for sprinklers, but I didn't have enough of any of these resources, so I headed to the mines to gather gold for the day. So it was time for iron the next day, and after successfully gathering over 60 ores, I returned for some gold before heading home, smelting it up and enjoying the end of summer at the dance of the moonlight jellies. But it was back to work on the 1st of fall. First, I smelted up some ores, then tended to my animals, before crafting up some sprinklers and setting up a large plot of farmland for my future crops. Once it was fully fertilized, I wandered to Pierre's where I bought a bunch of corn, which I planted. But I still had some space, so I headed back wanting more, just to watch him leave right in front of me. I disliked this man with a passion. Completely unfazed, I headed to the mines the next day and returned with enough gold to increase my corn count. Putting them in the smelter, I bought some more seeds, hoed the ground, planted them, and placed some scarecrows, before finally ending my corn farm with the sprinklers. It was truly a sight to behold. I quickly fertilized the next morning, then grabbed a bunch of gifts and headed into town. There, I realized I had forgotten Penny's birthday. I had one job. Nonetheless, I gave gifts for the entire day and checked out my brilliant progress at nightfall. I began day 60 by heading into town and noting that Elliot's birthday was tomorrow. Gotta make sure not to Then deciding for some strange reason that I wanted a house upgrade, I got to work chopping trees. I chopped a whole bunch of public property and bought the upgrade. I then decided that the 0.1 speed boost given by parts was nothing to scoff at and spent the entire night covering my farm. Tending to my animals and clearing my farm the next morning, I knew I had forgotten something, but I just didn't know what I had forgotten. So I gave Elliot a birthday gift, then bought a backpack from Pierre before remembering it. It wasn't summer, it was fall, so corn really wasn't worth it. Oh well, too late now. The following day was a Saturday, so after tending to my animals, I grabbed some gifts and headed into town. Giving them all out, I got to 8 hearts with Leah, then decided to upgrade my house again. I presumed I needed wood, but manual labor is cringe, and I wanted to use explosives, but I needed iron for that, so I grinded in the mines for the night. I wanted another barn the next day, so I chopped some trees and realized I needed a bunch more stone, so I chopped a rock, realized I was exhausted, left, and entered the town for Leah's art show. By the way, is that Leah's ex there? Why is he here? Making some fried eggs for some energy, I spent the rest of the day chopping stones. And after chopping a couple more stones the next day, I bought my new barn from Robin and built some path to connect it. Then with geodes in hand, I headed into town where I opened them all and donated a bunch of things to the museum. Before ending the day, committing some more suspicious activities and clearing the secret woods. In the morning of day 65, I noticed a missing piece of hay. So after grabbing some gifts and handing them out and sliding into Sam's bed, I emptied my silo, and after placing the hay into a chest, I got to work filling it up, clearing most of my farm and getting 240 hay by the end of the day. Noticing my house was a little bland the next morning, I tended to my animals and ran up to Robin's to get some decor. Are you serious? I spent the time gathering blackberries, then headed into town to participate in some clothing therapy. I saw some pretty amazing costumes, and after seeing Clint phase through a curtain, I left and spent the entire afternoon gathering blackberries, ending with over 100, which would surely last me a long time. My barn was finally complete, and since I wanted more money for no reason other than having more money, I got to work grinding for a barn upgrade, but manual labor is cringe, so I committed an act of terrorism and headed to the mines, where I gathered stone, got enough, ran back to the carpenters to see Robin leave the house. The next morning, I love you too, no. I ran straight up to Robin's and purchased my barn upgrade, then also bought a whole bunch of decor, which I went home and placed around. Wanting a painting for my home, I wandered down to the museum, but but the only prizes I had were seeds and a geode. A little disappointed, I decided to gather iron for the day as I wanted an iron pickaxe. So after grabbing the bars that I needed and some gifts, I headed into town and ordered the upgrade for my pickaxe. I then gave Abigail a birthday gift and spent the day handing out more gifts. By the afternoon, I checked my progress to find 6 people with 8 hearts. Very nice. My big barn was complete the next day, so I wandered down to Marnie's, was introduced to the blue chickens, bought 8 goats, then once again needing wood for a shed, committed an act of terrorism. A very satisfying act of terrorism. I then excitedly hopped onto the bus to attend Sam's concert. The music was questionable at best. I grabbed some wood and headed over to Robin's the next day, but I was too poor to buy a shed. So I returned home, grabbed a bunch of things and sold them, accidentally selling all of my food in the process. I bought the shed, then wandered down to collect my iron pickaxe and spent the entire night gathering hardwood. At around 8 PM, I headed to Pierre's and played with a Ouija board with Abigail. It was the Stardew Fair on day 72, so I harvested all of my corn for a gold star. And I was missing 1 corn. If you can find it, please let me know. I tended to my animals, grabbed 9 items and headed into town. After nailing the strength meter first time, I'm not even kidding, I actually got it first time, I set out my display and naturally came first. So I betted my entire net worth on green and won. I bought the star drop with my winnings, filling me with thoughts of... With only 5 more people to befriend fully, I grabbed some gifts and headed into town, where I handed them all out, getting to 8 hearts with Sebastian. I then decided to grind for some iron, so I could blow up more trees. And at nightfall, I returned to my home, and being the absolute brainlet I am, I smelted up the ore. That was a complete waste. Heading into town again the next morning, I got both Penny and Elliot to 8 hearts, leaving only Maru and Harvey. With that complete, I walked up to the mines and grinded for iron. This time when I returned, I didn't smelt them, instead creating 10 bombs and spent the night committing acts of gathering wood. Seeing as my goats had fully grown up, I decided it was time to get some cheese presses. So I gathered stone with my new pick, spread propaganda to some children, gathered hardwood and crafted some up. I then broke all of my already existing cheese presses and put them all into my new shed. I also added some path and spent the night listening to Elliot's new novel in the library. I harvested my corn the next morning. I could have made so much more money with pumpkins. I pressed some cheese, then grabbed some iron bars, which I used to upgrade my axe. I then remembered I still hadn't completed the mine, so I grinded until level 110, collecting my prize of the drippiest boots I had seen yet. I am now certifiably iced out. I found an ancient seed in my chest the next day. I had completely forgotten about it. Anyways, I wanted to complete the mines today, so I headed over and descended. I got the ladder on the very first rock I hit, so I thought I had great luck. I was very much incorrect. Every single level after that, I would have to break almost every rock to get a ladder. And at the point it stopped being Stardew and began being Break the Rock Simulator, I left, and checking the television, I saw that my suspicions were certainly correct. After tending to my animals, I grabbed the gold bar and gave it to Maru, finishing the 8 hearts and officially only leaving Harvey. I was so close to the secret cutscene. I gave him a coffee, then spent the day digging through the mines, eventually making it to level 120 and collecting my well-earned skull key. The auto grabber was available on day 79, so after tending to my animals, I headed down. This woman has the audacity to mail me about a new product and then just not be tending her store. Slightly annoyed, I headed over to Willie's and bought some tackle, then got fishing for a while before wandering up and giving Harvey a coffee. I fished on the riverbed for the rest of the day because I really like money. I harvested my corn on day 80. Can you guess where the last corn is? Put it in the comments. I would like your comment. When I was done, I headed down and bought 2 auto collectors from Marnie, which I put in my barns. I then wandered over to the beach where I fished for the entire day. I literally never stopped Willie? I literally never stopped fishing the entire time. I like money. On day 81, all I needed to do was wait, as I could only give Harvey 2 gifts per week. After completing a quick fishing quest for Willie, I ran up to the blacksmith as I had forgotten to pick up my axe. Clint had been holding it for 5 days. I then collected my cheese and spent the day chopping trees for a deluxe barn, the cringe way, via axe. I quickly entered the mines and chopped some rocks before heading over to Robin's, was electrocuted by Maru, then ordered a deluxe barn. But since I I had 2 barns and 1 does not equal 2, I got to work gathering stone again as I needed 300. I collected until I was exhausted and almost had enough stone. After tending to my animals, I quickly grabbed the last of the stone I needed, then returned to my home where I chopped trees until I had enough wood. I then wandered through the bus stop and entered the Spirits Eve festival. Entering the maze, I completed it with, may I say, relative ease, collecting my well-earned golden pumpkin. I placed a jack-o'-lantern next to my bed and went to sleep. I harvested my corn the next morning. Can you find the corn? I then admired my tree farm before heading into town to give Harvey a coffee. I then decided to fish as I needed to afford another deluxe barn. Now, let's play a game of can you find the man fishing? If you found me, claim your $10,000 in the comment section. I'm very proud of you. My jack-o'-lantern was rotten on day 85, and my farm was barren. So it was time to get busy. I began by tending to my animals, then heading up to Robin's, where I bought another deluxe barn. Walking through the town, I gave Harvey a coffee, then headed to Marnie's to buy goats and some heaters. Of course, she's the one to ruin my entire plan. I spent the day instead gathering ingredients for cheese presses for all of my future new livestock. So after tending to my livestock, I headed to Marnie's the following day. She wasn't there again. So as revenge, I handed her child a piece of trash. Heading up, I talked to Harvey before walking up to the mines where I grinded stone for the rest of the day, wanting enough to make 9 cheese presses. But finally, on day 87, after accessing the secret woods for the first time ever, wow, this place is awesome, dude. I filled both of my new deluxe barns with goats and bought 3 heaters, leaving me with 4,500 gold. After placing my heaters, I returned to the mines where I got the last of the stone I needed, then walked to my farm where I got the hardwood I needed. All I needed now was copper, so I smelted some up. Collecting them the next morning, I crafted up some cheese presses and placed them in my shed. I then collected my magnifying glass from the shadow guy and talked with Harvey, who was at 7 Hearts, by the way, then headed downwards to the beach. There, I bought some bait and fished, attempting to get myself off of financial rock bottom. I was off financial rock bottom with $20,000 in my pocket the next morning, so I headed into town when I realized I needed to see everyone's 10 heart event to get the secret cutscene. So I bought 12 banquets, grabbed a bunch of loved gifts and handed them out to everyone. Soon enough, I was dating everyone other than Harvey. And knowing the small amount of time I had left, I got straight to work grabbing gifts and heading into town. I gave Harvey a banquet and spent the day handing out gifts. And seeing as the week reset on day 91, I also spent the entire day handing out gifts again, getting 5 people to the maximum 10 hearts. I was reading the mail the next morning. After grabbing some gifts, I headed into town, but unfortunately, it was the ice festival. So I entered one with relative ease and collected my winnings. I then headed up and stared at some stars with Maru for a while and got saucy in the bathhouse with Penny. The next morning, I ran into town with a bunch of gifts and somehow ended up in the middle of the ocean with Elliot. I then discovered Haley's small dark room and Maru's sentient robot who decided to fly off instead of being a servant. Very inspiring. Shane told me to meet him at 5 at the bus stop the next morning, so I ran into town, talked to everyone, earning the beloved farmer achievement. With only Sebastian and Harvey left to get to 10 hearts, I headed off with Shane and arrived at a game of Grid Bowl. After our team scored, me and Shane had a little smooch, but didn't realize Alex was standing in his chair right above us. I had 3 invitations on day 95, so I tended to my animals, talked to Sebastian, getting him to 10 hearts, talked to Harvey, and returned home. When night fell, I had a very nice dinner with Alex. What the? I then had a nice conversation with Sam. Stay put. And finally, I headed into the secret woods at night and camped out with Emily. Hey, what's going on? Tending to my animals the next morning, I headed into town to chat with Harvey, then wandered up to the mountains where I fished until nightfall. Upon entering the mines, I saw Abigail be scared off by some bats. How did I get here? Making my escape, I was met by Sebastian, and riding off into the night, we stood at a cliff appreciating the view. I told him to stop smoking. On day 97, I walked down to Marnie's and bought some more hay. Yes, I'm also disappointed in myself. I then headed into town where I talked to Harvey and had some great luck with the bins. But finally, on day 98, it was Harvey's birthday, so I headed into town, interacted with a bunch of bins, and gave Harvey his coffee, boosting him right to the top of my list. I woke up to some mail saying to meet Harvey at the railroad. I do not trust the mustached man. Nonetheless, I headed over, but he wasn't there, so I exited, waited 30 seconds, and re-entered, and there he was. We went up in a hot air balloon above Pelican Town. It was genuinely beautiful. all. But when we got down, it was finally time. I headed into town and walked into the saloon. I was met by all the men I had been dating, who after some deliberation and me begging, decided to give me the cold shoulder. This is so sad. Now, it was time for the women. So I headed into Emily and Haley's home, but nothing happened. I then realized I hadn't seen Leah's cutscene, which can only happen in spring, summer, or fall. So there was nothing else to do other than grab some cheese and sleep for the next 12 days. Other than the Feast of the Winter Star, where Lewis was my secret person, that fraud was acting surprised. He literally gave me the mail. But finally, on day 113, I walked into Cindersap Forest to meet Leah. Her ex came, who I was right about being at the art show. Leah socked him right in the face. But it was finally time to see the final cutscene. I entered Emily and Haley's home to see all of the women in a gathering, and after some deliberation, they also decided to give me the cold shoulder and kicked me out. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Smash subscribe and also the bell and the like, whatever. It doesn't bother me. I'll see you later. Bye.